Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. To all my graceful audience, Assalamu alaikum. I'm Rahmat Empowerment Wala, striving to achieve self sustainability for me and for the people alike. I'm host of this interview series named Empowering Minds. The objective of this interview series is to call upon such prestigious and honorable guests who haven't just explored their own mind power, but are trying to empower others' minds. So, to serve the purpose, we have JENILEE Samuels with us, and she's a podcaster herself and head of uh, head of Java with Gen Podcast. So let's start the conversation here. First of all, let me welcome my prestigious guest, JENILEE Samuel. Hello, JENILEE Samuel.
Hi there. It's good to see you. Good to be here.
Thank you so much for your presence here, and I really appreciate you.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. So to follow the pattern, I would like you to introduce yourself to me and my audience, so we get to know you better.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. Well, it's nice to meet you guys. My name is Jenna Lee. I am the host of Java with Jen podcast, Hearing God's Voice for Everyday Life, where I normalize for my Christian audience how to hear God's voice for regular life situations. But I also am a podcast coach. I've been podcasting now for about 5 years, and I am a top 1% globally ranked podcast. And I'm in about 87 countries and counting, Pakistan being one of them. And so I love to help people start their own podcasts and get their voice into the world. And so, yeah, happy to be here.
Excellent, excellent. So before going to the questions I've listed for you here, I would love to know how was
Mhm.
your experience in Pakistan and when did you visit Pakistan?
Oh, well, I've never been there, but my podcast is listened to over there. So
Oh,
my husband has been there, but I never have.
oh, apologies. I thought I listened. You were there, here, Pakistan. My apologies.
No, that's okay.
So,
Maybe one day.
inshallah, inshallah. So, how did your husband find Pakistan?
Oh, I'm pretty sure he enjoyed it. He's actually was born in India, and so he's from that side of the world, and so it's very similar culture to his, and so he enjoys it over there.
Excellent, excellent. So, coming back to questions which I've listed for you. So, my first question will be for you is what's the difference between an interview and podcast?
Okay, well, basically, a podcast is a medium of communication. And so it is basically listening to a show or an interview, kind of like radio, where it's audio only. A lot of podcasts now have gone to video as well. So it can be either one. And a lot of podcasts are on YouTube as well. But an interview is when there are two, a host and a guest, or maybe even more than that. And then just a podcast itself is kind of like the umbrella. And you can either have solo podcasts where it's just one person talking, sharing their thoughts, or you can have an interview podcast where there's multiple, or you can have a discussion type podcast where there may be 3 or 4 people.
Okay. So let me tell me if I'm right or wrong. The interview is more about the personality you are talking to, and the
Mhm.
podcast is more about the topic of discussion you have in that session. Is it right?
Um, I mean, a podcast has a focus. So your podcast is built around empowering minds. My podcast is built around teaching people to hear God's voice. So the podcast is the medium of communication. It's a type of communication or a type of entertainment. And then, so a podcast does have a focus. It's an interview is a type of podcast. Does that
Okay.
make sense?
Great. A little bit. Okay. We'll, we'll try to catch that.
Okay.
So the next question would be to how to start a podcast.
Sure. Well, podcasting, I feel like, is one of the easier forms of media and digital communication that there is. But there is still some work to it, which is why I started coaching podcasters because I didn't have anyone to teach me. And so I learned everything on my own. And so it took about 3 years for me to figure out what I was doing. Um, But you can basically start a podcast by finding a platform that will host your recordings. And so I use Spotify for podcasters, and that is where I do all of my recordings and I upload my recordings and I edit my recordings and then I publish them from there. And then Spotify ends up pushing it out to all the other platforms like Apple and Google Casts and Overcast and all the other platforms that play podcasts. And so that's technically essentially how they'll get started. There's a lot of details to the process, but essentially they need a way to record and that they need a way to host their show that puts it out on the different platforms.
Can you hear me?
Hmm.
Okay, I thought there's miscommunication. Okay, so the next question would be which topic to choose that we have to build the podcast around.
Um, the topics, there's all sorts of topics people can choose. Typically you want to choose a topic that you have an expertise or a passion for. The point of podcasting is people typically listen to podcasts for either entertainment to just burn the time or to learn something new. A lot of podcasts are around education and teaching you concepts. And so, whichever topic that you choose to speak about, you want to make sure that it's something you have some expertise in and that you can educate people on. And if you don't actually have an expertise, but you want to learn or you want to provide a place for people to learn, that's where you end up interviewing people who do have expertises in that area, and you ask all the questions and they do all the expertising, all the coaching, all the education, if you will. And so yeah, that's how you choose your topic. And then you want to, if you choose like an industry, say you want to go into health and fitness, and that's what the industry you want your podcast in, you want to choose something even more specific than that. So if I'm in health and fitness, that's an industry. But then you want to do what they call niche down your podcast. So you niche down, which means you get more and more of a specific focus. So if I'm in health and fitness, let's say maybe I have a passion for the nutritional side and choosing foods that boost your metabolism. So then I would say I'm in the health and fitness industry, but my focus is nutrition for women after 40 years old, how to lose weight and stay trim and healthy. And so that would be niching down to a very specific focus. And so yours, empowering minds, you may have a specific focus, or maybe yours is very broad, but the more clear that you are about the topic that you're focusing on, the more likely you are to attract listeners, because then they understand, oh, well, that's a topic I want to learn about. So I need to listen to that show.
Excellent. Okay, I've started my podcast. I've chosen my topic. How to approach the
Mhm.
right guest for that podcast?
That is the biggest challenge for all podcasters. The biggest, and it's kind of like a snowball. It's very slow in growing. Not many people find listeners super fast unless you already have a large platform. So, your teacher, he has 13 million followers on Facebook. If he started a podcast, he would have a lot of listeners already just out the gate. He would just tell all his followers, he would have a big popular podcast right away. But someone like myself who had no real big following when I started, I had to kind of grow over time. And so some of the ways that you reach people is, if your focus is health and fitness, we'll stick with that one, then you want to promote your podcast wherever health and fitness people hang out. Maybe you make business cards and you leave them at the doctor's office. Maybe you make business cards and leave them at the gym for people who are looking for stuff. Maybe you get in Facebook groups that are built around health and fitness and you share about your podcast. You can also get in podcast groups and connect with other podcasters and get on their shows and speak to their audiences. And that's how they can learn about your show. There's a lot of different ways to find people, but it does take time and it takes consistency.
Okay. So, how to approach the guest we are calling upon in our podcast to talk on a certain topic?
Oh, for interviewing. Okay. Um, The way that I have found guests has varied. Some of them I know personally, some of them I don't know at all. A lot of them I have found in Facebook groups, and I'll just make a post, like a Facebook podcasting group, and I'll make a post and let them know what my show is about and what kind of guests I'm looking for. And then I'll ask them to either send me a message or comment, and a lot of people will do it that way. Sometimes, if there's an author that I really appreciate, then I will send them an email, or build a relationship with them on social media, maybe Instagram, start liking their posts and commenting on their posts, and eventually send them a message. But you kind of want to build a relationship with people before you ask them to come on your show, because usually people of influence have a lot of invitations to begin with, and they have to choose carefully, and they're likely to choose to go on the shows where they either know that person, or they have a good relationship with that person, or that it will be advantageous to them to go on that show. And so you can pursue them a number of different ways, but I find that it's best if you look around and see who's around you that has expertise that you can have them on, because those are the easiest people to find.
Excellent. Okay, guide us step by step how to prepare for a certain podcast.
If I'm interviewing somebody, you mean?
Sorry, I can't hear you.
Do you do you mean if I'm interviewing somebody?
Yes, right, right. Like you have approached the guest and you have finalized the date and time, and then now it's the
Okay.
time to start that interview or podcast. How would you guide us step by step how to prepare for that certain podcast or interview?
Sure. Well, a lot of it is prepared for even before we get on the call. And so let's say I've made contact with someone and we've agreed that maybe we could be on each other's shows or they could be on mine. Then we will get on a preliminary phone call. It's called a meet and greet, where we get to know each other a little bit to make sure that they're a good fit for my audience and that I'm a good fit for their audience. And when we do our meet and greet, I ask them questions, I learn about their story. And as I'm doing that, I'm thinking through what would be a good angle to focus on when we're actually interviewing. And so I take notes while I'm on the phone call with them. And then I communicate with them, okay, this is what I'm thinking. How does that feel to you? And then I ask them, is there anything that you're wanting to promote, maybe in your business? Did you write a book? Do you have a program you're trying to share with people? That way I can make sure that that interview promotes them as much as possible. And then I say, okay, thank you for taking the time for this phone call. I'm going to send you an email. And in the email, I'll send you my Zoom link. I will send you my calendar link so you can choose a good recording date. And then I send them all the questions that I will share during our interview. And then when they pick a final recording date, they already have the questions, they already have the Zoom link. And so they're well prepared. And then we can get on the recording. And then they already kind of know what to expect. And we just kind of roll through the questions. And then I promote their program. And then we say goodbye. It's pretty simple, but the preparation ahead of time is important.
Excellent. And podcasting or interviewing needs to be on time, and punctuality is very important. So how to
Yeah.
manage time, how to be a good time manager, some tips on time management.
Well, preparing ahead of time is important. I have found that doing the meet and greet, I make sure to send them an email immediately after that so that I don't forget. And that way they're not waiting on me to send them the information that they need. And then whenever, let's say we had our meet and greet, and then 2 weeks later, we're actually recording, I will send them maybe a couple days out a reminder. Hey, just a reminder, I have you on my calendar for Thursday at 2 for us to do our interview. Is that still good for you? And they usually say, yes, that's great. And then the day of the event, about 2 hours before, maybe 3 hours, I'll send them a last reminder. Hey, I just wanted to draw your attention back to the email I had sent. If you have any final questions, the Zoom link is in the email, blah, blah, blah. And they usually are okay at that point. And then I just make sure I'm usually on the call about 5 minutes before we're scheduled to be on it. That way, if they get on a little early or if they have any questions before we start, then we can work all of that out. And then there's frequently technical issues that will come up, just all sorts of different things arise. And so we just work it out while we're there on the thing, and then I press record after we've worked everything out.
Excellent, excellent tips, ma'am.
Yeah.
Okay, how to because the presenter or interviewer is the driving force of that podcast or interview session.
Mhm.
So how to all focus would be on that presenter or host. So how to be confident in hosting the interview session or a podcast?
Yes. I was taught years ago that one way to be confident in what you're saying is that instead of focusing on trying to impress anyone or on trying to sound intelligent or anything like that, not focusing on yourself, but instead focusing on the fact that what you're bringing is a gift to your listeners. It's a gift. It's going to make their life better. It's going to improve their life. And then you can get most people get excited about giving someone a gift. And then their focus is on the other person and not themselves. And so when we focus on the fact that my podcast blesses people and it encourages people and it motivates people, then I can get excited about sharing my content without getting nervous because I know that it's going to bless them. Just like you would be excited to give your best friend a gift. It's that same kind of mentality. And that helps to fight the nerves a lot.
Excellent. So talking about nerves, even an experienced host or interviewer can,
Mhm.
commit some mishaps during podcast or interview session. So
Yep.
how to handle such incident?
Well, thankfully, mine is not live. And so I pre record and then I can edit out any kind of incidences that happen. I've had it where kids walk in and interrupt the interview, or dogs climb up in the camera and it kind of throws it off. So that's why I don't do it live. It gives us, a little bit of grace for those kinds of things. But the truth be told, I mean, when COVID happened and everybody had to work from home and work on their laptops, I think it made everybody a lot more gracious about when interruptions happen. And so you just kind of roll with it. Mistakes happen. It's not the end of the world. Nobody expects you to be perfect. And so I think just rolling with it and being gracious with yourself as well as other people helps.
Excellent. Do you think that there's a certain good time in a day to do a podcast, or you do any time?
I record them anytime, but I post them. They go up live on my channel on Tuesdays at 12 o'clock Central Time in the US. And so I chose that time. A lot of times they say the best time to do it is like 4 a.m. on a Tuesday or on a Wednesday morning. And the reason is that people listen to podcasts the most on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. They don't listen to them as much on Mondays or Fridays or the weekend. And so usually posting on a Tuesday, a Wednesday, or a Thursday is going to get you more traffic because more people are listening to podcasts on those days.
Why do you think these days matter?
Well, I don't know if it will be the same in every country, but the majority, I think 80% of podcast listeners are US based. And so in the US, most people on average work Monday through Friday. Well, on Mondays, people are usually focused on their work week and what has to be done and what has to be taken care of. So they're maybe don't have as much downtime to listen to podcasts because they're focusing on what needs to get done that week. And then Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday is just the middle of the week. They're kind of in their rhythm and they're getting things done, but they're enjoying a podcast along the way. And then when Friday comes, they're maybe wrapping up what didn't get done that week or what needs to get done before the weekend. So they're working a little hard. Or maybe they took an early holiday and they has started their weekend early. And so usually sometimes people will, if they take a vacation day, they'll do it on a Monday or Friday to have their weekend be a little bit longer. And so usually when people are taking downtime, that's not always when they're listening to podcasts. Most people listen to podcasts when they're driving to and from work or during a lunch break, or if they have a job where they can listen to things like that while they're working. And so I think that's why it's Tuesday through Thursday is the top days.
Excellent explanation. I didn't think of that this way.
Yeah.
Okay, so audience is very important for a podcast. So how to grab the attention of audience, how to market your podcast.
Yes, this is very important. So if you are titling your podcast, like for example, my husband had a podcast for a while, and the titles of his episodes uh were really boring. And so I had to go and help him. I said, Steven, you have to change the titles of your podcast. They need to sound interesting. They need to make you curious so you want to listen to the episode. So there's two things that are very important. You need to make sure that your titles of your episodes and the descriptions of your episodes have a lot of important keywords that would be like the search terms that people would use to find your topic. For example, if your podcast episode is around creating healthy meals for your work week, then you want to use keywords like make your family's meals in no time at all during the work week. Oh, that's a terrible title. But anyways, you have to choose keywords that they might search. So they might look up quick meals or um, family friendly or healthy eating, those keywords that people might use to find your topic. You want to put those kinds of words in the titles and in the descriptions so they can find your content more easily. But you want to word it in a way that's interesting and makes them curious so that they'll listen to your show.
Excellent. I hope your husband is not listening to you right now.
He knew he needed help with it. He does a lot better now. There are a lot more interesting titles now.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you, Sufyan Nasir, for watching me and praising me. Thank you, brother. So, generally, tell me about something more of yourself. Where do you belong to, and which city you're living? How's that city?
Oh, well, I live in Texas and I live near Houston. And so we are down on the coast near the Gulf of Mexico and not far from Louisiana, which is the next state over. And so it's very hot here. We have a lot of mosquitoes. And in the summer, it's very humid. I hear that it's very humid. Well, actually, I don't think it's humid in India, but it's very hot over your side of the world, correct?
It is very warm and humid, mostly in May, June, July. You cannot stay
Mhm.
without, having bathing 3 or 4 times a day.
Yeah. Yeah. It's similar to that over here. It may not be as intense as your heat, but over here we have a lot of air conditioning and we stay inside in the summer. But it's a wonderful state. I love it. It's very patriotic. We love America and yeah, it's a wonderful area to live.
Excellent. And near beach living is always a fascinating. Karachi, where I live, there are lots of beaches, and I love beaches.
Oh. Me too. I do too. Our beaches are not super pretty. You kind of have to go to Florida to get a pretty beach. But we still go to it anyways because it's what we've got and we love the water. So
Excellent, excellent. So I would love to talk about confidence building with you. How to be a person who have confidence in himself. Could you share some tips with us in confidence building?
yeah, confidence does come with time. It comes with experience, and there's no shortcut. There is a phrase that we use sometimes over here. I kind of like the phrase because it's true, but I kind of hate the phrase because I don't like to fake anything. But they say fake it till you make it. And so, in other words, sometimes you might not feel confident, but if you smile and if you think happy thoughts, sounds silly, but if you smile or if you even take a confident position with your body, that can actually help you feel more confident. And so smiling at yourself, like if you see yourself in the camera, smile at yourself, or even saying some reminding yourself of how good you are doing, like, hey, you started a podcast, you did this on your own, you're doing amazing, you're reaching people, you're helping people, this is a good day. Saying like pep talking yourself helps your confidence. But confidence grows over time. When I first started podcasting, I felt like a total imposter. I did not feel like a real podcaster until I had probably done 75 to 100 episodes. And
Excellent.
even then, yeah, even then, I probably didn't feel like a real podcaster until I realized I was being listened to all over the world and had a top globally ranked show. Then I was like, oh, maybe I'm doing something right. So it takes time.
Excellent. And some advice to those people who are weak in, expressing themselves verbally,
Mm.
how they, get themselves better speaking.
Some people are naturally more eloquent, and some people just have to put more thought into it. I want to encourage those who maybe have to work a little harder at it. Don't get hard on yourself. Everyone has their different talents. And so, doing something that is a little harder for you takes courage. And so encourage yourself that you're having courage. And whenever we do something that's not natural to us, it's difficult at first. But if you keep doing it, you will get better. And if you're not naturally gifted at communication, maybe you're more of an introverted person and you're better at thinking than talking, then it's better if you prepare ahead of time and maybe write out some talking points and go through it a few times on your own. That way you get comfortable with the topics and you can think ahead of what you want to say. That helps a whole lot. Even for people, I consider myself pretty natural at communicating on the spot, but it still helps me to prepare ahead of time to be smoother and a little more eloquent with my words.
Excellent. You talked about introvert persons. So I've met with some of them, and they feel like they are left behind. Like
Mhm.
when in gatherings, they feel like they are left behind. So, is there any possibility that we make them to convert their introvert into extrovert? Can we help them?
We can. I think it's important that extroverts, I'm naturally an extrovert. And so actually today at lunch, I
Can see
sat
that.
across the table. Uh, I sat across the table from someone who was very introverted, and you could tell she was very uncomfortable. She was kind of like this and wouldn't make eye contact. But introverted people love one on one personal conversation. They love deep conversation. And so I make a point when I'm around introverts to take the time to really give them my full attention and ask them questions about themselves. And I do tend to carry the conversation a little more just because sometimes introverts appreciate that, but I do make the point to really try to make them feel seen and heard and like their voice matters. And I try to make room to let them speak about something they're very good at or very passionate about. That way they feel like they can bring something of value to the conversation. And so that's how extroverts can make room for introverts. Just really make time to connect deeply one on one. It helps them a lot.
Excellent, excellent advice, generally. And the last question I would ask you is my favorite question, and I really ask this question to all my guests. So, what
Mhm.
advice would you give to I would say, 15 years younger version of yourself, that 15 years
Uh-huh.
before you have met your wife? Can you hear me?
Now I can. Go ahead. 15 years younger. That's what I heard.
Yeah. My question was, what advice would you give to a 15 years younger version of yourself?
I would tell myself to learn new hard things. Everything can be learned. Anything can be learned. This is what I have learned now is that
True, true.
you can learn anything, you can do anything, anything can be learned. Everything is scary at first, but just because it's
Yes.
scary and feels overwhelming and feels like you'll never figure it out does not make it true. You can figure it out. You just have to stick with it. Our brains freak out if we don't understand what we're doing. And our brains get uncomfortable saying, I don't know what I'm doing here. And so you just have to teach your brain, hey, it's okay. We're learning something new. We will figure this out. And you will. And you can get good at anything. Everything just a step at a time. Don't let yourself get overwhelmed. And not quitting in those moments is very important.
Excellent, 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 Generally. By listening to you, another question pops up in my mind. How to
Sure.
learn, any new thing in our life?
We live in a time where learning new things is more possible than ever before because of the internet, because of YouTube, because of podcasts, because of blogs and articles and newspapers, and the ability to communicate with people across the world that you couldn't have communicated with before. And so we have more access to knowledge and information than any time in history. So now learning something new, there's not much of an excuse to not learn something new as long as you have access to the internet. If you don't have access to the internet, it does make things a little harder. But if you don't have access to the internet, you find people around you that are good at what you want to do, and you find a way to learn from them. There's always a way to learn something new, always.
Excellent, 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 Generally, Samuels, for your time. Thank you. I appreciate your presence here, and I really learned from you. Thank you for sharing pearls of wisdom with me and my audience. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, and best of luck to you in your endeavors.
Thank you so much. Audience, you have listened to Generally Samuel. I hope you have learned many new things. I have learned myself. You were watching me on my Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, Rahmat Empowerment Wala. I'll see you next time with new guests. Take care. Allah Hafiz. Bye bye.